Hello my fantastic lot, it's Mega Gran here again with another episode from Valheim with my husband, Grumpy Grandad, or Isus should I say. Now I hope you're all safe and well, and welcome to the last episode in this Valheim series. Now if you watched the last episode you might be thinking, well, what else is there? Because in the last episode we defeated Yagluth, and what an episode it was, well worth watching. Well, we couldn't end the series without sorting out the front of our house, because it really did need some sorting. It took us quite some time did this, and there was a lot of fiddling about to do, but we managed it. We got it to a state where we're really pleased with it, and this is what this video is about. So I'm going to be explaining to you what we did and how we did it. And as you can see, we started right outside the front door, and here we used a mix of the stone floor blocks and the 2x1 stone walls, and I think the mix goes quite well because of the texture of the stone walls, but it is a bit fiddly to get it in sometimes, especially if the ground is uneven. But changing the ground level can be so frustrating sometimes, but with a bit of practice we got the knack of it, and we found that that was one of the biggest problems to get over really. And on this build we were going for a bit of symmetry. So we wanted it to be the same on both sides of the stairs, and we wanted things to be centred down the middle of the house. So that's what we were thinking about when we were deciding on what to do throughout the build. So with the hoe then, we soon found that wherever you stood, if you hoed the ground in front of you, it'd bring the ground up to that level, if there was enough earth there to do it. And if there wasn't, then you added some earth with the hoe, and then you could hoe it down to the level that you wanted. And you can see me here just checking on the other side to make sure I'm putting these in the right place. And most of them, as long as the ground was flat, went in quite easily, as long as you had your cursor in the right place, which often was the side of the block you were placing the block next to. But you had to be careful not to overlap them, because it didn't look very good. I liked the line that showed the separate blocks. Now this corner bit was a bit of a struggle, and that was because I'd left a lump of ground in the corner, and I was trying to force it in because I was too lazy to try and get that lump of ground out to begin with. So when it went in, you could see that lump of ground, so I had to take it out again anyway. So don't be lazy is my tip, and sometimes you can't tell until you're actually either picking or hoeing which is the best for the job. So in this case I started off by using my pick, but with it being such a small corner, I'm not very good at corners at all. So out came the hoe, and with one swift movement it was gone. But that wasn't the only thing that made it problematic in a corner like this. The other thing was getting your cursor in the right place, and that could take an awful lot of fiddling, and you could find whichever piece you were using flicked in and out quite a lot, which was quite frustrating. And you can see from this, after a little bit of fiddling I placed it, but then when I looked you could see it wasn't placed correctly, because there was quite a big gap between one and the other, so out it came again. So sometimes the only thing you can do is get yourself a little bit lower down so that you can place the cursor where you want it, and sitting down on the floor enabled me to get it right in. Perfect. If you're making fairly good progress, you find that you have to place the stone cutter quite often to keep it in range of where you're working. So working round these round areas was not particularly problematic. As long as the ground was flat, placing these stone floor pieces went in quite easily, as long as you got your cursor in the right place. And that could be difficult depending on where you were standing. Working at night time was not a good idea at all, because it got very dark and you couldn't really see what you were doing. So we tended to sleep whenever we could so that we got the daytime, and then we could see a little bit better. Now the next bit we wanted to work on was making some flower beds in front of each of the round areas of the house. And using the stone to make round areas, whether you're building a house or whether you're building something like this, could be very problematic, especially if you got interrupted by a raid. Okay, back to it. Now we found a mix of the 2x1 stone walls and the 1x1 stone walls were the best option for making a circular part in a wall. And one of the things you could do with these stone walls was sort of push one inside the other once you'd got it at an angle. And that was good because you didn't have a big gap then between one stone and another on the curve. It looked like all one wall. The smaller stones on top and the larger stones on the bottom was a good combination we used to make the whole wall look much smoother. And the next morning I quite liked what I saw in the daylight, and you could see how smooth that was. But we also saw a problem with the stairs on this side of the build, because from here we could see that one of the stones was hanging precariously in the air. So we needed to focus on this bit to get it right before we actually continued with the flower bed. So we demolished it because we couldn't correct it how it was, and we used the 2x1 stone walls underneath to make it look that it was properly grounded, and then surrounded that with the stone flooring. The stairs were a little bit fiddly as well, because now it was at a different level. The stairs didn't fit properly. But when we placed the stone floor, placed the stairs on top, we found that we actually could walk up quite smoothly. Because sometimes it can be quite fiddly and it can stop you from walking up, but that worked really well. So we finished that off at the bottom and replaced the other side wall. And it was all nicely bedded on the stone floor. So a bit of lighting with the jack-o'-lanterns, which we could use at the time of recording, and lighting up the standing iron torches. Just finished off the stairs quite nicely. There was still quite a lot of work to do around the stairs though, with the side wall that we were going to change. There we go, quite liked that. And I could get up and down without a problem, so that was nice too. Now we kept revisiting this problem of uneven ground, and when we did the other side of the flower bed, we could tell that there was going to be a problem unless we sorted it out. So once I'd done the front bit of the wall, we had to redo a little bit along this side of the wall by lowering the ground and making sure that the wall was continuous all the way around. And to keep it consistent with the other side, once we'd got the lower bricks in, and to be consistent, we needed to use again a mix of the 2x1 and the 1x1 stone flooring, so it'll look nice and smooth and the same as the other side. And here you can see quite clearly how the 1x1 can actually be pushed into the stone next to it, which I think is a really, really neat feature of this building material. So that was it. We got the outside of the flower bed done, and we were quite chuffed with that actually. Quite chuffed with it. So now it was filling it in. And this didn't come without its problems as well, because using the hoe to fill something in often meant it spilling outside the area that you wanted it to go. So there was a lot of giving and a lot of taking away, a lot of practice and a lot of redoing. As you can see just below my feet there, a lot of that ground was pushed outside the boundary of the flower bed. So once I'd got it to somewhere reasonable, it was time to use the cultivator. And the first thing I was going to do was to plant a tree, and I wasn't at all confident that the tree would grow, because you know what trees are like in Valheim. Quite often there's not enough room for them to grow. So I planted it in and crossed my fingers and hoped that it would grow eventually. So the next job was getting rid of this docking area. It was always just a temporary build. I quite enjoyed smashing it up and getting rid of it. And of course, as far as building materials go, there's no waste in Valheim. You get it all back and you can use it again. So there would be a lot of wood there if we needed it, but really what we needed was a lot of stone. So I concentrated on the other side of the stairs, and it was after a few Valheim days working on that this happened. Oh, the tree's grown!
Tree's grown?
Look! The tree's grown!
It's very nice of it.
That looks fab, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks good.
Oh, that looks really good out there. Excellent. Oh. I know, what am I like? We spent a lot of time using the hoe, and we soon got the hang or the knack of how to use it. And basically, wherever you stood, you could bring the ground up to that or bring the ground down to that if it was too high. And if it didn't move where you want it to, then you got out the pick or you added some more ground. And if you were careful and patient, you'd get a really nice flat area. I think a lot of the times when hoeing goes wrong, it's because you haven't added enough soil or you haven't taken enough away. I think by far the most difficult part of this build was making sure the sea edge of the dock was at the right height on both sides. And the only way we could do that was to use wood and place it along the sea edge of the dock all the way across from one side to the other. We used core wood to help support it in the middle, and then we used the boat to enable us to place the core wood in the water. We had lots of discussions about the different levels of the ground on the way down to the sea and where we should have the different tiers. We experimented a little bit with the top of the wall, and I quite liked the iron railings in between the 1x1 blocks. It looked quite nice, I thought. Finished it off quite nicely. So we decided to have those all the way down to the sea on top of the wall. We decided to widen the staircase in the middle of the build so that it met each of the flower beds on each side. Of course, we needed to support the stairs, and we used the 2x1 stone wall for that. And it just worked out exactly that we could fit 4 of the stairs in between the flower beds. And we thought we were quite fortunate to have gotten that right, accidentally. So I carried on with the stairs and fitting them in this top part, whilst Grumpy Grandad had a very busy time ensuring that the seaside of our dock was the same on both sides. I think I got the much easier part of the job, because I only had to alternate between the stone floors and the stairs to make a nice slope down towards the dock, which I think could make a nice feature. We was always running out of stone, but there was quite a few areas around us where we could access stone, so it wasn't too much of a problem really. The plains were a good source of stone, but you didn't quite get as much as you bargained for from those great big tall pillars of stone. And when we knocked one down and we added up how much we'd got, between us we got about 7 stacks. So one of those pillars doesn't go very far. I mean, it would have been nice if it could fill at least a cart, but there are a lot of them about, so there is plenty of stone here anyway. At this stage of the build, we thought we needed another tier because of the slope of the land. So we worked on making sure that the height of the wall for the tier was the same on both sides, which meant a lot of running backwards and forwards. But we used the same trick as we did on the seaside, placing the wooden beams all the way across to the other side, and then gradually removing each of the wooden beams and replacing it with the stone walls. And it worked out quite well, I think. We had a big discussion about where the centre of the dock was going to be, and in the end symmetry won. It would need to be placed centrally in front of the stairs, and as we were structuring this bit at the bottom, it was plain to see that there would need to be a lot of stone to fill in some of this ground to bring it all up to where we wanted it to be. So we carried on adding the stone walls from each end as we came in towards the middle. Then we needed some kind of marker to show us where the middle was, so that we knew how far to come out from each side. We were counting, but we thought it would be helpful to have a visual marker in the middle. So again, we used the wooden beams, and we brought a line of wooden beams from the middle of the stairs down towards where the inside of the dock was going to be. And that gave us a good idea of how much digging we had to do and how off-centre the original dock was. So once we saw how much work there was in that, we concentrated on the bottom part of the dock and used straight angles to make this neat and clean. Most of this work was done in the sea, which was quite problematic, as when the waves came in, you couldn't actually hold your pickaxe or the hammer, so it took quite some time to do. But because of the tier that we put in and the bottom wall, it was clear to see where that inner wall was supposed to go. And then we needed to fill in the gap between the outer wall and the inner part of the land. And we got used to filling in because of the flower beds, so it was just being careful not to allow the filling in to spill out over into the sea bit. We used stone floor to further neaten the outside edges, and then the wood roof crosses for a vertical barrier. And that worked quite well until we got to this corner bit here when the wood roof crosses didn't quite meet. So until I could think of something prettier, I cobbled together a corner bit from the 1 metre wooden poles. It was a bit fiddly getting them exactly next to each other, and I had to use the shift key to be able to place them somewhere other than where they naturally wanted to snap in. But I eventually got a little bit of a straight edge there. So once we completed the stone floor edging in this section, we needed to think about what we were going to do with this bit in the middle. And it seemed a natural progression to actually make this cobbled. We didn't want too much of the stone floor everywhere. We wanted that as a sort of a decorative edging. And the natural choice was the cobblestone. And once we'd flattened the ground and put the cobblestone in, we were quite chuffed with the results. Quite like that. So now we needed to repeat this on the other side and make sure it was the same size. But another thing we had to do was to collect more stone, as we were forever running out of it. There was still quite a good local supply, but getting the cart out of the gates was a little bit of a struggle. And I did wonder whether it was going to be worse coming back with a full cartload of stone. We did have to get rid of a little pest up at the top there that kept spawning. But trolls had been quite easy prey for quite some time in this game. So it didn't take long before he was out of the way. And then we got on with filling the cart, which didn't really take that long. There was quite a lot of stone in the Black Forest. And then to tackle the gate. I tried to approach it very sensibly, but that gap did look very small next to the cart I was dragging. I had to wiggle it backwards and forwards, side to side, and eventually it actually got through. Could have really done without that upright middle beam in those gates. The next big discussion we had was about the shape of the inside part of the dock, and I fancied having a little bit more curvature just to offset all the right angles that there were in this. So we planned to bring the inner wall up to the stairs, but having rounded corners instead of right angles. So we started off with placing 2 of the larger wall sections at the bottom of the stairs. And those 2 wall sections would be at the centre of this part of the dock. And they were quite easy to place, but I did have to get rid of that section of wooden beams that they were crossing. And once this was done, then all we needed to do was to try and marry it up with the walls that were coming from the bottom of the dock, and concentrating of getting those corners smoothly rounded. And this was another good example of how working the land flat could help or hinder placing the stone walls. We placed a few, and then this one just would not go in at all. So I had to get out my pick and flatten the land a bit. And then try it again. And this time it went in straight away. And then to place the next stone, I had to build up the land, because the slope was quite deep down here at the bottom of the stairs. We were also getting a little bit worried as to whether the walls would join up in the right place. So we carried on with crossed fingers and hoped that we'd actually measured out everything correctly. And with that bit of stone wall going in, that was the end of that curved section of the wall. We just had this straight section to go, which of course would be going in front of the stairs and would be part of this central feature. But the big question was, would it meet up in the middle without leaving any ugly gaps in it? That was that section done. Now it was just for me to place this section. And I couldn't really tell whether it was going to marry up until I got that last brick in. And it finally fitted. And that was awesome. And when I went up the stairs and looked back, that fitted so well with what we were doing. Really, really liked it. So it looked right that we added the stone floors at the bottom of this section, and they actually fitted quite snugly in between the bottom of the stairs and the wall of the dock. And then it was working on the bottom part of the dock. We needed this to be neat and tidy on the inside as well as we approached on the boat. So we chipped away at it and used the larger sections of the stone walls. The curved sections were quite tricky because you was working underneath all the time rather than placing the blocks on the top. but with a bit of fiddling and a bit of chipping away and a bit of using the hoe, we managed to get that curved section looking quite neat and tidy. And of course some sections took longer than others, and some you chipped away and then you had to replace the ground because you chipped away too much. But that was the nature of building in Valheim. And I thought the behaviour of that stone wall there pivoting on that extra bit of ground was quite cool, because when I chipped it away a couple of times and then tried to fit the stone back in, it actually went in quite neatly. And then when I put the next bit of stone in, it blended in with that and made that curve look quite smooth. That was quite cool, I thought. There definitely needed to be another tier here, because the difference in the height of the ground from the top where the flower beds were to the bottom where the dock was quite severe. It was quite a big difference. So I needed to get my pick out, and we spent quite a bit of time taking this right back to the side walls. I would have liked these stone floor pieces to have fitted all the way around this curved area of the dock, but no matter how I tried, I just couldn't fit them in. So in the end, I decided to leave them like that, with gaps in them around the curved section of it. And I thought it might look okay with those jutting into the cobbled bit along this side. Having to reduce this section of the land exposed more of the ground underneath the wall. So we had to take it right up to the wall and adjust the bottom part by incorporating some of the wall pieces underneath the wall. I was quite surprised it didn't all fall down actually, but obviously it must have been touching the land all the way across. Cobbling this area too worked out quite well, because the cobble is quite cheap, and I think it did look okay with the stone floor around the curved bit. And taking it right up to the side walls and this back tier here, it created a nice open space for this bottom bit here, and anything could go into this bit. And then it occurred to us that this bit of wall here had mostly become redundant, and it really didn't need to be here. So after a little bit of a discussion, we decided we would actually get rid of it. And as we joined up the cobble from both ends, you wouldn't actually have realised that there was anything there in the first place, but we'd actually designed it like that. Little bits like this on top of this stone was quite annoying, but it was only a matter of lowering the ground a little bit with the hoe. In this case, there wasn't anything lower I could stand on, so I had to get my pick out and create a little dip in the ground. And when I stood in the middle of that and hoed it, it actually took the ground down. And then moving to the place where I wanted it to come up to, and using the hoe again, I was able to get it to the right level so that it wouldn't spill over onto the stone floor. I worked it a little bit more, just so that it was right on both sides of that corner. And then when I thought it was at the right level, then I added the cobble, took it right up to the stone floor pieces, and that seemed to work quite well. And although it took a little bit of extra time, I think the finished look was worth it. So the next big debate was whether to change these iron gates for the wooden gates. So we changed them just to see what it would look like. So in went the dark wood gates, and I thought they were a bit heavy and dark and ominous for these side walls, and the fact that I couldn't see through them was really a deciding factor for me. We tried them in anyway. Didn't like the arch on top and the squareness of the top of the door, so we took the arches out and I placed some of the straight wall pieces on top. There'd been quite a bit of swapping things around just to make sure that we knew what we wanted and we knew what we liked and what we didn't like. And I knew I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that I couldn't look out before I was going to open the gate. So the iron gates went back in. And I left those two wall pieces in above the gate and added the arches so that they were actually lower down. And I think that fitted better than having the larger gap to the arches. And that little change made all the difference to me. I really liked that. So we carried on getting the side walls sorted, putting the iron railings on along the top, all the way down towards the sea. So we'd just about finished the main structural changes that we wanted to make in this bottom area and the dock. It looked solid and clean and spacious, and I liked that. Next was to make an area to land onto the dock from the boat when the boat came in. And I used pillars for this and just sections of wooden stairs here. We tended to jump straight from the boat onto the dock area anyway, so I don't think it mattered too much what we put here. So this was our final day of building, and one thing we hadn't done yet was see what the base looked like when approaching it from the sea. So we decided to take the boat out to see what the base looked like, as if we'd been on a long trip and was coming home. And of course it wouldn't be Valheim without a little bit of mist around first thing in the morning, but we were really chuffed at how the base looked when we approached it from the sea end. And as we came slowly in to dock the boat, the mist started clearing, and as we approached the right hand side of the dock, we could clearly see what all our work had produced. Every single use of the pick and every single use of the hoe, every single cartload of stone, I think it was worth it. And even though you think you're finished, there's always something else to do. Like this extra pillar here, that was to help me place the lamps on top of the pillars on the dock. So I needed to get rid of this. And of course we were reminded of how many tables we needed when we needed to do something with iron or with stone. The crafting bench. And the stone cutter. And one hit and that was gone. We did a little bit more landscaping and we tidied things up a little bit. We could have done a lot more. We could have added more greenery. Could have fought a few more golems and got some more glass for the house. Could have made a few more flower beds. And I could have planted a few more in the flower beds that we had. I could have not pointed at that flower and unearthed it. I wasn't going to replant it now. We could have made an area with tables and chairs where you could come out and eat and sit in the sun and chat about all your Viking adventures. That could have been in this bit here. That would have been nice. But we didn't want to do any more. I think we'd finished. We were going to call it a day. What did you think then? Have you enjoyed the series?
Yeah, it's been good. I like the action stuff rather than the building stuff. So
Yeah,
they're my highlights of the fights.
Yeah, but you tolerated it, the building stuff, very well, I must say. And you did a lot. You know, it's not like you did a little bit and then disappeared.
No.
So you did it. You did build just as much as me. So
Yeah, and some of them were even my idea.
yeah, you had a lot of ideas, and I think you do when you get into the building. Yeah, I've enjoyed both aspects of it. I like the fighting and the building, and the exploring. The whole thing, really.
Yeah, I prefer the exploring and the fighting, but that's just me.
What was the worst bit about this then? The series?
Well, getting killed when I didn't want to get killed is the worst bit.
Well, for me, the fact that we had to restart in the middle of it because of that glitch. We haven't had that really spoil the game since then, so you know, we got rid of that, and that was good. It'll be interesting to see in our next game what we're going to have as a base. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, we're trying to do something different.
Yeah. Maybe a modern build?
Could be, yeah. We still used in this build a lot of the original materials.
We did, yeah.
With the upgrades now, our next build we could use some of the more, the newer stuff.
Yeah, I mean we could have refurbished this one to include all the new stuff, but I quite like the look of it, so I wanted to keep it the way it was.
That's
really.
right, yeah. So maybe the next time we do that.
Yeah. But of course we wouldn't be able to refurbish it until later on in the game, then, would we? I mean, build. So whether we just had little temporary bases all over until we got all the things that we wanted, and then built a thing.
Yeah.
So, but it's difficult because you want to build and have somewhere comfy and have somewhere for all your stuff all the way through the game, don't you?
Yeah.
So.
But we could change. We could change things. We could rebuild, modernise.
We might not even need to have one big base like this. We could have smaller bases in each of the areas that we have to go in. We could build in the mountains. We've not done that.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so yeah, there's all sorts of different things.
And then there's the Mistlands when they come.
Oh yeah, gosh.
So
there's so much more to
come.
Yeah.
It's a good way to finish, looking out into the darkness.
It is. The moon's just disappearing there behind that big tree.
Yeah.
And that's your lot until the next update. We'll be playing Valheim in the meantime, but I won't be recording that because we have a couple of new series coming up on my channel, so watch out for those. But thank you ever so much for watching. Thank you for all your comments. I really enjoyed replying to them all. I'd be really interested to see what you think of the base, what changes we could have made, what extra bits we could have put in. Anything you want to comment on at all, I don't mind. Whether you loved it or you hated it, everybody's got their own opinion. And I'd love it if you could show your support for my channel by clicking on that like button, and if you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button. And we shall see you in the next series when the next substantial update happens. Hopefully it might be the Mistlands, who knows. So bye bye for now, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.